Thank you so much for joining us, Code. We are really excited to have you here as our first guest, and I'm going to let Megan kickstart things off. We've got lots of questions to ask you. We have a little bit of time. Let's go.
Great. Okay, Code, I know that our early stage clients would really like to hear from you on two things. One, if they're coming to pitch to you guys, is there an early warning sign or anything that makes you take a little step back and be really cautious with that particular company? And then on the flip side, is there something that immediately draws you in and builds trust and kind of encourages an investment in an early stage company?
Sure. So another way to frame it is, what are we looking for? And I think it always comes down to the team, especially at the earliest stages. Entrepreneurship is hard, innovation is hard, starting a company from zero is very, very hard. And so we spend a lot of time evaluating the team. And we're looking for transparency, openness, willingness to learn, willingness to recognize what they don't know, as opposed to, we know everything and we're going to win for sure. Second, obviously, is the market. It's the big driver of success, highest correlated factor. And so is it a market we're interested in, and is this a team that we really want to back and spend the next 5 to 10 years with?
Yeah. And just a follow-up question on that point, on the transparency. I know with particularly really early stage companies, often there will be challenges in the initial team, the initial founders. And we always encourage our companies, of course, to set up in a way to migrate the team as safely and quickly as possible. That being said, sometimes they're really cautious and reluctant to share those team changes. And so that's something that you look for is transparency, and if there has been early team changes, you're not necessarily going to look negatively on that. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you can't expect the perfect founding team right out of the gate. I think the secret power of a good startup is to surround themselves with advisors who have expertise in the areas that they lack. But look, we've seen literally thousands of companies, and we've seen it all. It's sort of like your doctor. You can take your clothes off. We've seen it before, and we're not going to get excited or upset about the good and the bad.
Now, I love that. And, a key thing about even in your company's name is that, just you hear venture and you hear venture capitalist, you think money. And any company that's watching this is thinking, okay, am I in the right sector? Am I doing the right things? Am I in the scope of these venture capitalists? So maybe I should ask you, what sector do you feel is getting a lot of attention and why?
Sure, you can start with some numbers. So we do IT broadly. IT globally is about a $4 trillion business. $1.5 trillion of that is telecom infrastructure. Another $1 trillion is services. Where we care about most is software. Software of the $4 trillion is only about 10%, $400 billion. And then within that, there's a category called SaaS. And SaaS is a common term, but it turns out it's only a $60 billion market globally. We think that market will grow to 200 or 300 billion over the next 5 years, 5 to 10 years. And so we focus exclusively on enterprise SaaS software. And what does that mean underneath it? It's the technology enablers that make it grow. Things like artificial intelligence, things like blockchain, things like AI. These are essentially math tools that are available today because we have high-end computing, and that makes the software smarter, and that makes enterprises smarter and more efficient, and that's where we focus.
Beautiful. And just the communications that you've had with other venture capitalists. Now, I know you have offices, globally for that matter, and you are consistently in that conversation. Maybe you can share with me a little bit, what do you hear about them in general, about potentially investing in companies here in Ottawa? And we're making a splash, but what are you hearing through the grapevine?
Sure. Well, I'll start out a little more broadly than that. So we have offices in Palo Alto and in Los Angeles, but our headquarters is here in Ottawa. And we do 80% of our investments in Canada. And roughly a third of our investments so far were Ottawa-based. I can tell you over the last 6 years, in fact, we just did this study, 6 years ago, about half the rounds that were done were accompanied by US investors, 50%. Last year, it was over 80%. And so that means in the almost $4 billion that was put into this category last year in Canada, 80% of those rounds included US investors. So there's no question that the world is waking up. US investors are coming to Canada. We have massive amounts of leverage in things like SHRED and OCE and FedDev. I can go on the statistics. But there's never been a better time to be an entrepreneur in Canada. Ottawa absolutely bats above its weight class. We've got deep sector domain experience and expertise in telecom, in e-commerce, in security. There's no question that we're very well positioned.
Fantastic. Well, for those of you that's watching this, thank you very much for joining us. We are here today at AccelerateOTT, and you're watching Techopia. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's such a pleasure in having you, and it's so nice to know that we have a Ottawa-based venture capitalist like yourself that's really, just proponing Ottawa and promoting us and making sure that the world knows about us. So thank you so much.
Hey bro, go for what you know. Bass getting low and we rock the show. Hey bro, go for what you know. Bass getting low and we rock the show.